Welcome to Marketing Brew Weekly, where we dissect the trends and strategies that are surprising and delighting the marketing industry. I'm Jenny Mywin, reporter at Marketing Brew.
I'm Kelsey Sutton, editor.
And I'm Katie Hicks, senior reporter.
Today, we are breaking down why brands are increasingly becoming entertainment studios, a move that comes with pros and cons, obviously, and I'm curious whether everyone out there would watch a branded movie. So let's pop some popcorn and find out. Okay, so the reason we have to talk about why brands are becoming entertainment studios is because there was news recently that I'm sure everyone here saw that Gap announced a chief entertainment officer, which is an entirely new role filled by Pam Kaufman, who's a former Paramount executive. What was your guys' reaction to the news when you saw this?
New CEO, new type of CEO in town.
Yeah.
So one of the things that caught my eye in the announcement about Pam Kaufman joining Gap as chief entertainment officer is that she's tasked with heading a, quote, fashion-tainment
Love
platform. And we here at Marketing Brew Weekly love a good sort of combo wombo.
A portmanteau.
A portmanteau.
Yeah, it's a portmanteau. But I just have so many questions about what fashion-tainment is going to look like. But it's tied to just about everything you could imagine, according to the press release: music, TV, film, sports, gaming, consumer products, cultural collaborations. Which is sort of everything that marketers want to be a part of,
Everything
right?
under the sun.
Everything people like.
Right. Culture at large, for sure. I guess the argument is that I think in the Adweek story I was reading about it is that Gap sees fashion as entertainment, and they're not the only ones, right? I think every fashion brand out there is like, obviously people come to fashion shows and fashion week for an element of entertainment. So they're leaning into fashion as entertainment, as fashion-tainment, a beautiful word that we now get to be aware of.
And we've also
Combo
kind of see this,
wombo,
yes.
as we've called
With their music videos, I feel like we're very much entertainment content too. Like
Totally.
the Cat's Eye one, and then before that, Troye Sivan and Parker Posey.
And
doing
then
these,
all the way back to the 90s
Right.
when they first did it.
yeah. So calling back to this like era of, you know, advertising their clothes in a very fun, entertaining way.
Yeah, which people loved when the Cat's Eye ad came out. Obviously, that came out in opposition to the Sydney Sweeney ad, which had a different element to it. But I think genuinely, like, the entertainment value of the Cat's Eye ad was something that people gravitated to for sure. And Gap's not the only brand that is doing this. A couple of other brands have done it over the years, as in getting into the entertainment space. Dick's Sporting Goods, Under Armour, Nike, REI, which, very interesting. They're all kind of like sports adjacent, sports apparel. And then Fanatics, super recently, they're also a sports merchandising brand, announced that they're going to be producing films, documentaries, live events, and digital series as well. So it's happening elsewhere, but it's pretty interesting that's in the sports realm particularly.
Well, we've also seen Starbucks launched one in 2024. LVMH, the luxury fashion brand or luxury fashion house, started their own. So we're seeing it across industries. But yeah, I feel like sports is really ripe for it because like
Sports is entertainment.
documentaries. I mean,
Yeah.
Nike especially is so like cinematic in what they put out anyways, and it makes sense they would do long form stuff too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, I want to break down sort of why. So if all these brands are doing it, there's got to be a reason why. And I kind of want to dig into what the benefits sort of are here. So we talked about it with Gap. You know, fashion and entertainment are very, very closely linked. And this is very much an acknowledgement of that. Sports and entertainment are also very, very closely linked. But it's not just about entertaining somebody. It's entertaining somebody enough to drive them to make a decision about your brand, buying something, being a part of, you know, that brand's offering. So what else do you view are kind of the benefits here for a brand that says we're planting the flag, we're hiring a chief entertainment officer, we're making it known, it's official, like we're doing entertainment stuff?
Yeah. I mean, the big thing that comes to mind is when you do that, you're bringing a lot of this creative process in-house, right? Which kind of makes two things really easy. Brand alignment, because you don't have to rely on other partners or third parties to make sure that everything is in alignment with whatever your brand's values are. And then faster processes, because everyone that's working on it already works at your company. I mean, those are things that brands want all the time in general. So I feel like that is just a huge pro. You mentioned Starbucks earlier, Katie. They did that, and they said when they announced their entertainment endeavors, they said it was to deepen connections and spark conversations through original entertainment. So kind of that brand alignment piece of like, oh, like we're already doing this, and like we can do it in a more meaningful way that like shows Starbucks's values in this new way, but we have total control over it, which just makes it so much easier for them to be like, yes, this is the Starbucks message, which I feel like maybe we started to see when they rolled out some like new campaigns earlier this year, or last year technically, and I feel like people resonated with it a little bit. So I wonder if that's kind of the product of bringing some of this stuff in-house.
Yeah, on the processes thing too, like I talked to Liquid Death recently, and they have their own like in-house like writers room basically. So like they're very focused on entertaining people too, and like creating like comedic content. And they said that yeah, by doing it in-house, they can like take risks and not worry about like multiple layers of approval and getting everybody on board. They're just like, okay, if we can get our CMO, CEO sign off, we're good. Like we can take risks and make things happen really quickly.
Yeah, there's just less people you have to get like approval through. Like all those layers are just here. They're probably in your Slack channel. Like you don't have to send an email and wait 3 business days for someone to respond. The other example I think is interesting is one that our producer, Leah, actually loves. She listens to this podcast, Dish Podcast, which has 455,000 subscribers on YouTube, and it's all about celebrities and food culture. Kelsey, tell me a little bit about what brand is involved in this that we should be paying attention to.
Okay, so I loved this. Our producer told us about it when we were talking about the show, and I went and I watched a couple episodes, and then I was like, oh, this is my new favorite thing. But it's actually put out by Waitrose and Partners. They're a UK-based supermarket chain. So I feel like it's not in-house. I just want to make that clear. They work in partnership with the production company. But so it's all about food and culture. And then it's like, oh, by the way, supermarket chain is presenting this. And then at the end of the episodes, you might see a product image of all the products used to make whatever recipe it was. And they're also all available to buy at Waitrose Partners. And there's a special thing on their site. So you can go exactly there, find the recipe, and everything's right there. So it kind of makes that purchase process really seamless. And I thought that was a really genius way of embracing food culture, because think about the way that people I love watching a recipe video, because then I can actually figure out, am I capable of making this on my own with my own skill set? I find that really helpful, and it's really engaging, and I really enjoy it. So I was thinking that is such a nice example, because it's not super branded also. And I think that is something that is a really interesting challenge here for brands that are wanting to entertain, is not having the brand so much at the forefront that it almost like smothers the creative idea. And so I thought that was a really, really interesting, thing. But again, they're doing it a little bit differently. They have a production partner. And so I wonder what the benefits, again, we talk about the benefits of having it all there. Katie, I'd love to know your thoughts here, because when we talk about brands that are building out really big, kind of robust in-house social processes, I feel like the line between social content and just you're making a TV show is kind of increasingly blurry. So I wonder how you think about that, like the social talent, as you're building in-house, and then how that translates. Because then if you just are saying, okay, we'll just make this 23 minutes instead of 5 minutes, like it doesn't seem like that much of a jump to me.
Yeah, and people are increasingly watching like TikTok videos or Reels like they watch TV shows. And we saw this with Tower 28. They put out they put on a few series actually in the last year, but one of them they brought on writers from The Sex Lives of College Girls, which is an HBO show, and they made it called like The Blush Lives of Sensitive Girls. And it was really pulling on this idea of like comedy as a way of marketing. We saw this with Built too, their Roomies series. And I think that really touches on the point that you made, Kelsey, which is it's not a very branded show. Like Roomies comes out, it's a show about a girl who's like trying to find her way in New York and moving in with like random roommates, and it's not explicitly like, and I used my Built card to pay rent. Like they don't really mention the brand. They just like put it in the description if you like click through and go to like the account page.
Yeah, no, I think that is the smart way to do it, because when you kind of are committing to more of the entertainment route and like being entertainment, people have different standards, I think, for entertainment than they do for ads. If you're going to make a piece of entertainment but then slap your brand name at every possibility, people are going to leave that experience feeling a lot more exasperated with the brand than if you're watching Roomies and you are connecting to the story and you think it's funny. It's about a girl from the Midwest, so I do connect to the story. And you find out later that it's made by Build. I didn't care that it was made by Build. I was kind of impressed that it was, and I was like, oh, this is something that actually brought value to my life rather than slapping the name in at every possibility and making sure I really knew that it was made by Bill. And it is like a balance that brands have to strike, right? Because they obviously want you to know about their involvement at some level, but if you do it too much, then people might not like it. So
I think
that's to consider.
ultimately, yeah, if they can make you laugh and if you can like say like, oh, I really like this thing that Built put out, you probably feel better about Built than you did before watching the series. And maybe you didn't even know about them before, but you're like, oh, they're the people who made that really fun series. Like I like them more. And I feel like that's another benefit of this is like brand affinity, but also like brand loyalty too. Like you might be more willing to like stick with Built or try a Built card or any brand that puts out content because you're like, oh, I like what they do, what their brand seems to stand for, like what their brand tone is.
And we're talking about it in the social realm, but like I think it all applies to this longer form entertainment studio space that we're seeing these brands dive into. And I think if you can do it on social, like Kelsey said, 5 minutes versus 23 minutes, the difference here is how much effort it takes to make it. But if you are committed to doing it, like why not potentially make a bigger impact with a longer form thing? But it is there are some costly pieces to that for sure.
Yeah. Something this makes me think of, and I'm thinking about it too because Netflix earnings are this week, but Reed Hastings, who's the former CEO of Netflix and co-founder, he sort of infamously one time said that Netflix like was competing with everything, and he said we actually compete with sleep. And I think that brands are kind of recognizing it's not just entertainment brands, it's every brand kind of recognizes that they are competing with every other thing that is attracting a consumer's time and attention.
Because we're
Anything
so
in your
online,
life.
we're so
Right.
we can't be bored. We must be consuming content.
If you're a brand on TikTok, you're not just competing with other brands on TikTok. You're competing with creators on TikTok that are not branded.
Regular
that
people, yeah.
You're competing with YouTube. You're competing with a Netflix show. You're competing with Paramount podcasts. Literally, I mean, sleep. And so I feel like again, it's kind of an acknowledgement that if you are a brand, you really want to connect with consumers, build that community, build that connection. There are multiple ways that you have to do that. And I think increasingly entertainment has to be, for a lot of them, they're saying we have to be playing in this space, and doing it in-house again is one way of doing it. But I would love to talk about some of the challenges too, because Jenna, you mentioned the cost as one of them.
Little spendy.
I know. Yeah. I mean, it's not cheap to make content ultimately. Like every streaming brand knows that. Every Hollywood studio knows that. It costs a lot of money to make things, and the longer you make it, the more it literally costs to make it. So that's definitely something that I think brands are considering when they're coming into this space. And something that like is different for a brand coming into the entertainment studio space is that if you are making something that is like made by Glossier, let's just say, I don't think they've actually made an entertainment studio, but that's my brand of choice today. You probably don't want to be like tapping your competitor at another brand that's at Sephora, Fenty Beauty, and being like, oh, do you want to be featured in our content because it's meant to be about your brand. And that I feel like is a key way that entertainment studio streamers do kind of offset some of their costs is by bringing in these brand partners. So I think that's a really tough cost specific challenge that brands have to navigate. And I'm curious if eventually, if something is made by a brand, if they're like, oh, we will bring in partnership brands that we are interested in working with that also want to get into the entertainment space. I don't know if there's enough interest in it at this point or enough like kind of groundwork to get everyone in, but I imagine that would be a smart way to eventually split some of these costs here because it's expensive.
Yeah, you can't do brand placements if it's just your one brand featured.
Yeah, but like I think about like a show like we were just talking about Emily in Paris, like brands on brands on brands, and it's so
More brands
easy to
every
bring them
season.
in.
More and more.
Yeah. And it fits in because it's a show about marketing too, ultimately, right? So it's like so easy to do it. But like, you know that like the Netflix executives and the people who are producing Emily in Paris are like, yes, we love that we can do this so easily because it helps pays the bills. Yeah. So just something that I think that they need to be thinking about for sure. But some other challenges out there. What are you guys thinking? Or
I mean, I think to Kelsey's point earlier, like you're competing with everything online, and we've seen some brands try to make like web series before, and they haven't worked. Like L'Oreal a few years ago put out a web series targeted to hairdressers. We don't know why it failed, but it didn't pick up. Pepsi made a show with MTV called Match Me If You Can. It was a way to promote their Pepsi mango flavor, which was supposed to be a permanent flavor edition in 2021, but was discontinued.
Tragique.
Yeah, so the show didn't last and neither did the flavor, but I feel like, with these things you have to wonder like, was it competing for eyeballs? Was it the cost? Or was it like overly branded? Because I think that's another point here too is like, again, if you're too in your face, if you're like, welcome back to the Pepsi show, people might think it's an ad. They might skip through it. They might not want to sit through it. But if it's very subtle, I think people are more likely to pay attention.
But it's so interesting with that specific example. What that makes me think of is like, I agree. If I'm watching like a reality show or whatever, and it's like, welcome back to the Pepsi show, I'm like, ugh, I don't want to watch the Pepsi show. But like something like the Super Bowl halftime show used to be sponsored by Pepsi, and it's like the Pepsi Super Bowl halftime show. I'm not rolling my eyes at that because I'm like, oh, like that's something that is sponsored. That's like historically been sponsored. But something about a TV show or a movie, like a piece of like actual entertainment being like, we are officially made by this brand. Like, I'm just immediately rolling my eyes.
Well, and the thing is too, like YouTube ads are longer now. There are more ads per video. Like you're seeing more ads on TikTok across all platforms. So if you're watching something that's very explicitly branded and you have ad breaks and you go back to the show and it's like product placements, like ads galore in what feels like, I mean, it doesn't have to be explicitly, but it's like you're always being marketed to. And I think once people realize that, they turn off and they're like, all right, like this doesn't feel entertaining anymore. I'm like too locked into the fact that there's a product here they want me to buy.
Yeah, something I'm thinking this is making me think about is, there are these ad formats on, and this is a small diversion, but I promise I'll get to the point that I want to make, which is, how sometimes you're watching a streaming show or something, and it says the next 3 episodes are given to you ad free by like some brand, whatever. And then you watch one 30-second ad or like one 60-second ad or something. And then the next 3 episodes, there's no ads. It's almost like a gift. I wonder if the way that brands can think about this is that is sort of what they're doing. It's like, okay, here we have a show that is entertainment and there's one product thing at the beginning or it's announced right at the top and then you're free.
Yeah. I mean,
you can just watch it and enjoy.
Yeah, I think people would be a lot more receptive to that because you're like, okay, I've seen the ad. I accepted that it was an ad. Now it's not going to be an ad for the rest of it. But if it's made by a brand, like, is it still inherently an ad after that, even if you're not seeing that brand constantly throughout? Like, how would you feel, Kelsey, if you were like, okay, I saw the ad at the beginning and I know the rest of these episodes are made by a brand? Would you still be down to watch it?
I think I would, but I don't know if it would work as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big question I have. Is like, these are obviously like big brand building plays, like very top of funnel, but it's sort of like, what do you see? Do you see someone who watches this go, I now have a bigger brand affinity. I'm going to be more likely to buy Glossier when I go into Sephora or whatever, because I, watched this show? Or is it like, oh, that was fun, and then you immediately forget who's sponsored?
Right. Well,
right?
so that's the example that makes me think of that we kind of talked about at length before this, is that we kind of, while researching this episode, discovered that Emilia Perez, the movie, was made by Saint Laurent Productions, which is a branded studio. And that was something like we weren't really aware of until we took the time to look into it. And Katie said that like you said that like last year there was like a moment where like
it showed that there were like a million different production houses that were involved in the movie. They're like, the credits at the beginning take like 5 minutes to get through.
And you kind of noticed that Saint Laurent was one of them.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, everybody's involved in this movie, sure.
Yeah. But like it's not like you were like, oh, this is a Saint Laurent movie. And now like years later we're like, oh, crazy that happened. But it's not like we're sitting here thinking like, oh, like positive thoughts that Saint Laurent was involved in this movie, or negative thoughts because, Amelia Perez had a generational run of sorts. But I don't know. Yeah. So I think it speaks to what you're saying, Kelsey, where it's like, okay, like if you are going to go through all of this effort to be involved in creating long form, especially something like that that's like Oscar baity and like meant to be like art and takes a lot of effort and money, what are you getting out of it at the end of the day if people don't know that you're involved? But then if you're too involved, you're also going to maybe face some backlash.
Or are you now suddenly just like running an entertainment company and you're also as a total
Forget the purses, we're doing movies
quest?
now.
Yeah. Who needs like YSL Beauty or any of the bags? We're just doing movies. Are they making any other movies? Maybe we should look into it.
They are.
know.
I think they are.
Wow.
Yeah, I think they are. But I think something that is interesting to me too is like, so we talk about like oversaturation and then like undersaturation. And I wanted to bring up an example that I thought was really interesting, which is on Prime Video, there is a docuseries called Group Therapy that's about, it's literally exactly what it sounds like. But it is actually backed by a pharma brand, AXA, but it's really minimal. But instead, what that company kind of did to support this was that there was sort of a film festy tour, there was promotion outside of the show itself that more heavily emphasized the involvement of the brand to make that clearer. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. So it's like if you're watching the show itself, it's not really obvious, not super in your face, but it's sort of all the supporting materials that make the brand a little bit more present. And I thought that was kind of an interesting balance. And it's like there are lots of levers that a brand can pull to kind of fit in that middle ground that maybe makes people aware of the involvement, possibly give them a positive association with the brand without it being like, oh my gosh, here we go again. Or being like, who made this? Like what brand?
Right.
You know?
I think that's such an interesting example too, because the film festival aspect in particular is like an interesting area for brands to play in, right? Because it's like film festivals have a certain level of like prestige and interest and like artsiness to them. So it's like you are creating kind of that type of vibe around your brand by showing up there. But if you're upfront about being like, I'm a brand that's showing up here and I helped make this movie, like you're not hiding that it is brand created and like you want your brand name to be out there. And I think film festivals themselves are increasingly leaning into this too, because we are seeing more branded entertainment show up at festivals. Tribeca X is a big portion of the Tribeca Film Festival here in New York. Sundance is coming up soon. They have a bunch of branded stuff that's happening there too. So I think like both sides of the equation are recognizing the value here. Brands being like, I can get some of this cultural prestige, and film festivals being like, we can get brands to show up and do things and probably help sponsor and pay for things. So lots to consider for sure.
It does feel like this is the latest. I mean, we've seen brands kind of try to entertain people in the past before. Like this feels like the latest iteration of like brands in the past doing their own like blogs and stuff. Like it reminds me of Glossier having like Into the Gloss, which I used to read all the time.
Yeah.
And like Netflix has Ta-Da, and like Dollar Shave Club had Mel Magazine, which is now sadly defunct. But yeah, I mean, even just like rewatch podcasts too. Like HBO Max puts out like a podcast after every episode of like The Pit or like The White Lotus, and like they create their own stuff based on their content to get people to watch it. So yeah, it feels like as brands move more into like the movie space and the TV show space and web series, things like that, it's just kind of like what are people being entertained by now, and how can we like jump in on that?
Because it used to be blogs. Like every company had a blog, and some of them still do, but I just feel like company blogs may not be read as much as they might have used to, because Into the Gloss is essentially a blog, right?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And now I follow them on Instagram now, and I think they've kind of evolved that well, where they're like still posting on Instagram and like interviewing interesting people and doing it on that platform. But yeah, it started with blogs. It became actual publications, and then now it's into this multimedia form of entertainment that the pivot to video, it got everyone.
No one's reading anymore. Everyone's watching TV.
No one has the attention
and the
span
brands
for
know
reading.
it.
Yeah.
But it's just like a way more expensive version of it, right? Because like, again, making a TV show, even short form video, this is not cheap. This takes a lot of money. And
You want it to look good. Yeah.
Yeah,
You gotta
especially
put some money down.
Once brands get involved, like they have the means to like make production look good. So they're like, why would we not? I think it's interesting because I feel like brands used to want like that like raw, authentic social media element more, and now that social media has kind of like moved towards like more production. Brands are like, all right, let's like make this look like it was shot on a film camera, and I like it, I guess, but it is an interesting difference for sure. Well, lots to consider here, but I'm curious what you guys think. If you had to choose, what brand are you interested in, or do you want to see maybe get into the entertainment space that you haven't seen yet?
I already mentioned them earlier in the episode, but I feel like I want to see Liquid Death do something longer. Like I want to see them do like a TV style episode of something, because they're really good at making like little campaign videos that are funny, but like with their writer's room, I'd be curious if they could put out something, because they hire people from the TV world, so they could do it if they want to do something longer.
I mean, having the writer's room, yeah.
I feel like they have the chops for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to go back to our producer Leah's favorite show, the Dish podcast. But I think a US based grocer could do something very similar, and I think that could be a weekly series on a streaming platform. You know, imagine. You know, Walgreens or what am I thinking? Wegmans. You know, Wegmans
yes.
or Trader Joe's or something.
Yeah.
It is. Like
I would definitely watch a
cooking
Trader Joe's show.
series.
Yeah.
It's fun. Maybe you bring on celebrities. They
It's
talk about their
essentially
favorite-
Food Network.
Yeah, pretty much. But it's just branded. It's it's like slam dunk to me.
Trader Joe's is a great shout because I feel like people really ride or die for Trader Joe's. And I think they had a podcast, or I think they still do. So like, podcasts are basically
a
talk
show.
shows now anyways. So just put a video camera in there. People will watch it. I think mine is like a beauty brand of some sort, maybe like a Rare Beauty. I feel like beauty just shows up nicely on camera. There are celebrities also like already involved, obviously, with like a Rare Beauty like Selena Gomez, her competitor,
I
Hailey
could see them doing
Bieber.
like a documentary. They're so involved in like the philanthropy world that I'm kind of surprised they haven't.
True, yeah. Maybe they have. Maybe I just need to look into it.
Yeah, and
see.
that reminds me. I think Hulu did like a little show at one
Yes.
point, but it was with musicians and then kind of going through their beauty routine
With Sephora,
With
yes.
Sephora, yeah. And again, I'm like, feels like such an easy win.
Yeah, the area is ripe for sure. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. And if you have thoughts on what brands should be getting into the entertainment studio space, or just a show that you think we should be watching, branded or not, tell us. Send us an email at mkbw@morningbrew.com, which you can also find in the show notes. Catch you next week.